Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the hidden and honestly fascinating psychological machinery behind everyday casual conversation. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That slightly awkward, desperately searching for a topic small talk we all do, but almost never actually stop to analyze. Well, let's uncover the hidden matrix of idle chatter.
Let's kick things off with a pretty simple question about that highly relatable, sometimes completely agonizing, social idle mode we all find ourselves in. Picture it. You're at a party where you literally only know the host, or you're just standing by the office water cooler, or stuck in an elevator. We instinctively just default to chatting about the weather, right? Or sports, or our weekend plans. But why? Why do human beings universally default to these super mundane topics?
Well, here's the absolute paradigm-shifting insight from our source material. Most of this social interaction isn't actually meant to exchange information at all. You aren't really exchanging data about the rain outside, you're establishing a baseline of safety. It's actually emotional temperature regulation disguised as a conversation.
Which brings us to Section 1, the purpose of small talk.
Our source defines these everyday interactions as pastimes, and this is where it really gets fascinating. Think of pastimes as sitting perfectly right there in the middle, between highly structured identity rituals, like a formal handshake greeting, and intensely goal-driven procedures, like a strict business meeting. Pastimes are incredibly low risk. They fill time, they keep the group glued together, and crucially, they regulate emotional distance without demanding any real vulnerability or complex decision-making from anyone involved. It's literally the ultimate social idle mode.
So, moving into Section 2, Social Idle Mode Explained.
We actually use this casual talk to achieve 3 major psychological goals. First up, cognitive offloading. Look, we've all had long days, right? Pastimes reduce the need for meaningful thought. You can jump in and participate without burning any real mental energy. Second is emotional safety buffering. It just keeps our interactions entirely non-threatening. And third, status stabilization. This one's huge. It allows people to participate in a group dynamic without exposing their competence gaps or taking on emotional risks. I mean, you definitely don't have to be the smartest person in the room to complain about weekend traffic. Now, this system operates on 2 distinct feedback loops. First, you've got the light side, the cohesion loop. Light conversation leads to reduced tension, which increases group comfort, and that naturally leads to more light conversation. It's wonderfully stabilizing. But then there's the dark side, the avoidance loop. When a group continually avoids deep topics, you get sustained surface interaction, and over time, meaningful connection completely stagnates. The system stays stable for sure, but it totally stops evolving.
All right, Section 3, the power of the topic.
If you really think about it, the person who manages this control node ultimately dictates the emotional temperature of the entire room. As our source points out, people who control conversational direction control emotional distance. Whoever transitions the group from the surface level down to something meaningful, or conversely, yanks a meaningful conversation back up to the surface, is actively managing the psychological safety of the whole group.
Seriously, ask yourself who dictates the weather at your family dinners or your team meetings, because those individuals are utilizing these exact, subtle forms of social power. Notice who defines the topics. Pay close attention to who redirects the conversation the second it gets a little too real or maybe a little too quiet. Observe who sets the social tone, whether it stays super light, gets serious, or shifts to analytical. That person holds a massive amount of subtle influence over the group dynamic.
Let's look at Section 4. The danger of social stagnation. This brings us right into the stagnation trap. The real danger pops up when a group uses pastimes purely for avoidance. And the result? Relationships that remain socially active on paper, but psychologically, they're incredibly shallow. The group becomes stable, yes, but it becomes entirely non-evolving. Just imagine a team at work that only ever jokes around, but literally never tackles the hard strategic problems. They're comfortable, but they are completely stagnant. And this trap is dangerously universal across some highly critical fields. Confusing idle mode with real communication invites systemic failure. In financial trading, low-stakes chatter can totally distract from actual market signals. In chess, it replaces hard positional calculation. Cybersecurity attackers actually exploit this by creating irrelevant system noise just to divert attention from real threats. Even in the military, while informal talk boosts morale, it becomes incredibly dangerous the exact second it replaces rigorous planning. The stakes of staying stuck in idle mode are frankly incredibly high.
Finally, Section 5, building the trust infrastructure. Okay, so this is a massive paradigm shift. In modern social systems, these low-cost bonding moments are actually vital relational warming systems.
They aren't just filler. They are the physical infrastructure of trust. Because you can't just walk into a room of complete strangers and demand deep vulnerability or seamless high-stakes coordination, right? Pastimes provide the absolute essential social calibration needed to create the baseline conditions for that deeper procedural communication later on.
So, how do we actually master this dynamic? You can deploy 3 counter strategies to optimize your communication. First, become aware. Recognize when an interaction is stuck in pastime mode purely out of avoidance. Second, have the courage to deliberately shift the conversation to meaningful or procedural discussion when the context actually requires depth. And third, use pastimes intentionally. Don't use them to hide. Use them as low-cost bonding mechanisms to build trust and warm up the relationship. It's all about skillfully navigating that transition from surface-level safety to meaningful depth.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to reflect on your own social loops. Look closely at your interactions at work, with your friends, and with your family. Are your daily pastimes actively building a trust infrastructure that allows for deeper connection? Or are they just a highly evolved mechanism for keeping the world safely at a distance? Basically, are you using conversation to connect or to avoid? Think about that the next time you find yourself casually talking about the weather.